I did DJ Lindy for an hour.
Safety dance. Dun 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 dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Does sound weird. All right, hey, listen, man. Whatever gets you off.
Go live on playback.
What is happening, everybody? And welcome to MLB Live Before Lock, which is currently Mike. Do you want to press the go live button on playback, or do you want me to press it? Okay. We are live on both YouTube as well as playback. If you guys want to see the MLB Sims, we're going to have that up on playback over the course of the show. And then also, so we want to try to, there's no basketball games tonight, and we can't quite show baseball games on playback quite yet. It's a feature that we're hoping is going to be added to playback sometime in the near future for the baseball season. I have a deal done with the MLB. So here's something I thought would be fun. After we're done with MLB Live Before Lock, we'll jump on over to playback. Eric and I will shoot the shit. We'll make fun of each other, and we'll put on screen the MLB game day stuff so we can see like the in-play runs, in-play outs, and we could just tilt bad calls by umpires and stuff. We'll see if it's fun, if it's something you guys like. If you like it and people stick around, it's something we could do more of in the future. If you guys don't like it and nobody watches, they'll know, hey, this is something people don't care about. But the only way we'll find out is if we go ahead and try doing it. So if you guys want to check that out afterwards, go ahead and do it. If you haven't done it yet, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Eric, what's happening today? How was your weekend?
My weekend was phenomenal. The Minnesota Timberwolves, your Minnesota Timberwolves, my Minnesota Timberwolves are into the Western Conference Finals, which kind of has me thinking I might have to head on out for a Game 5 that speculatively could happen here next week. Was looking at flights and figuring out timing of how to get there, where to do, because I've got a spot to stay with my folks in Minneapolis there. So I think this is something I have to arrange. They went to all 3 games that were in Minneapolis. Very, very jealous that they were able to. But now that the Western Conference Finals are headlined, they have home court advantage. I can't even believe that this is my life here. What a time to be alive.
Hey, they've been good. They've been good for, but and like I think I've been betting on the Timberwolves the last 2 years. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a fan as long as they're valued in the betting market, which I think they have been this year. So it's been a squad of mine this year. I've enjoyed rooting for them. It's been really fun. They've been good, and hopefully they continue to be good for 2 more playoff series. And then I have a feeling it's probably the last year I'm going to be rooting for them with you, Eric, because it's kind of like a couple of years ago I was a big Celtics fan because this was a team that people weren't really on. Now I'm going to have to find whatever my next team is after the Timberwolves that I think is undervalued. But right now, Minnesota, that's been my squad the last couple of years. I'm excited for, and we've got baseball to talk about today, and no real weather concerns, at least that I'm seeing on the board. We'll start by just getting that out of the way. Is it the same for you, Eric? Anything that's really concerning to you as far as the weather is concerned?
Nope. So we've got some humidity in some spots. We've got some heat. It's starting to heat up here May 20th. Hope we start seeing the ball fly a little bit more here as we go along. But from a weather perspective, from looking at anything that has to do with potential delays, I mean, just know that, for Atlanta, they're not on the main slate today, so we don't have to think about any pop-ups or anything like that. But looks about as good of a clean weather slate as you could possibly get.
Yeah, and I've got Sims running right now for a final figure of what it is that I'm going to be playing today. And then we'll also be talking through the slate, answering any questions that you guys have. And of course, if you are a Stochastic sub, one of the perks of being a Stochastic sub is you do get access to our Discord channel. Get at me at any time over the course of the show. I'm always keeping an eye on that to answer any questions it is that you guys have. But before we start breaking down all the individual pitchers here, Eric, is there any in particular overarching thoughts, particular angles on the slate that you want to talk about before we get into talking about some of the pitchers and stacks? We're like, it's okay if you don't have anything, but I just want to ask you if there is anything before we get into it.
Yeah, I think we get these early pre-405 games, so we get a little bit larger Monday slate. I mean, this is only 8 game, I suppose, for the main slate, but I think for overall, when you're looking at pitchers like a Yamamoto up there, 10-5, 10K, I mean, they're going to put certain restrictions on your lineups, but I think that for today, it would appear that I'm embracing some of that at the top and just kind of getting to some of the cheaper stacks that come along with it. But overall, I mean, there's no weather concerns. We have a couple of extra games pre-4:05 p.m. Pacific, 7:05 Eastern. I really do like this slate. I think there's one pitcher that I'm probably going to die with, and that is just kind of what it is. But I'm pretty excited about this slate because I've got a couple of stacks also in mind that pretty cheap that I think we should be utilizing.
Ooh, so I'm interested to see who it is that is going to be making or breaking your slate. Also, we've got all of the lineups in, with the one exception being the Dodgers. At least that was the case right before we had started 5 minutes ago. So that'll be nice when we get all of the lineups in. Hopefully, the Dodgers have been doing this a lot recently, which is really annoying. The slate locks, and like 5 minutes afterwards, they release their starting lineup. It's like, no Will Smith today. Or the other day, Max Muncy gets put on the injured list, and it's like, no Max Muncy. So hopefully their lineup either comes out before lock, or at least if it comes out after lock, it's not anything, weird with players that really matter that are missing from the lineup in any kind of way. Let's start talking about the slate as a whole here, Eric. And where we're going to start by talking is the high-end pitchers. We'll also go over some of the ownership projections here. I'm going to refresh it on my screen to make sure nothing has changed. And here we go. All right, so if we're looking at the high-end pitchers, let's group the 5 pitchers that are $9,000 or more expensive together. That is encompassing Yamamoto, Sonny Gray, Pablo Lopez, Logan Gilbert, and Tanner Houck. Of these pitchers, almost all of them are somewhat popular. Yamamoto's 19% owned. Sonny Gray is 18% owned. We've got Pablo Lopez from your Minnesota Twins, project for 25% ownership. Logan Gilbert is the only one of the pay-up options that's sub 10% owned, but it's not like he's 1% or anything like that. He is still picking up 8% ownership in a very difficult matchup on the road against the Yankees. And they've got Tanner Houck pitching on the road against the Tampa Bay Rays, 16% projected ownership. If you're paying up for one of these pitchers today, Eric, who's the one you would go towards? Ownership isn't too big of an issue on any of these guys, with being kind of flat at the high end.
Yamamoto. I am of the mind that Yamamoto, we're going to start seeing a lot more strikeouts coming down the pipeline here soon. I mean, he's already priced up to 10.5. We're starting to see some signs with his stuff coming off of 4 earned against San Francisco. Don't really care there, but I mean, the guy has been extremely consistent in Arizona this season. When we used to see them like bottom dweller, like 17, 18% strikeout rates against righties, they're up to 21.2% with just an 89 WRC plus. We've seen Corbin Carroll have some issues in the early going of this season. That's obviously been a downgrade to them against some of these right-handed pitchers. You do get Jock Peterson back into the party in Dodger Stadium, which is something I'm sure he's excited for. But from a strikeout perspective, we've got some guys who definitely that we should be expecting in this lineup, including Jock Peterson, Christian Walker. Ketel Marte has been north of 20%, not always the norm for him. So I think Arizona, just when you talk about the overall stuff for Yamamoto, right there at a 27.5% K rate, and then he's at half the ownership of some of these more popular pitchers, half of like Taj Bradley. You've got Sonny Gray, who's pulling about the same ownership there. I have a lot more concerns about the weather there in St. Louis in terms of humidity, heat, and then how good that Baltimore lineup is with a 4.1 implied total going up against Sonny Gray. I like getting to Yamamoto as like my quote unquote security piece of this slate.
So he's my second most rostered spend up pitcher, with the caveat being I'm not really spending up for pitching all that frequently today. There's a lot of guys that I'm liking kind of like the 8K range. The field is as well, but I think it is for a good reason. There's guys like Taj Bradley that I think delivers a lot of upside, as does Framber Valdez in his matchup against the Angels. So that's really where the bulk of my exposure is going at pitcher. However, if I am spending up at the pitching spot here, the one I'm getting to the most of is Pablo Lopez. Now, with that said, I'm not all that different from Pablo Lopez. The field hasn't projected, or we have the field projected for 24.6% ownership. And Eric, I've got my Sims run here, and in my top 150 lineups, Pablo Lopez is in 25.3% of them. So I'm very, very close to the field here on Pablo Lopez. No real big stand, but I do think that he's the safest from a cash game perspective in a matchup against the Washington Nationals. He's also a pitcher who suffered from a little bit of bad luck this year. His underlying numbers are about as good as it gets. So we've got Pablo Lopez this year, 3.93 ERA, but a 2.88 expected ERA, a 3.19 FIP. And here's where he's kind of gotten like a little bit unlucky, just a little bit of bad sequencing with a 70% strand rate. His career average is 73.4%. Like those few percentage points, that would actually be enough to bring down his ERA, but about half a run or so. And his strikeout rate's been great this year, 28.7% K rate for Pablo Lopez. That's no real surprise. I think this is one of the better pitchers in the American League that doesn't really get talked about as one of the better pitchers in the American League. And in this matchup against the Washington Nationals, and then also when you consider some of these other pay-up options, like you mentioned, Sonny Gray, really difficult matchup. Tanner Houck, somewhat of a difficult matchup on the road against the Tampa Bay Rays. Logan Gilbert, obviously, hard matchup against the Yankees. Yamamoto, not quite as hard of a matchup at home against Arizona, but he's $1,000 more expensive than Pablo Lopez. So all those things put together has me prioritizing Pablo Lopez here on the high end. Now, are there any of these other, like I know you said Yamamoto is your favorite here, but are there any other one of these high end pitchers that you are finding yourself getting to in lineups?
I'm okay getting to a little bit of Sonny Gray, mainly Baltimore. We could end up getting to flip and seeing Sonny Gray being a little bit lower owned. I don't think I'm the only one who has concern with some of those lefties in the Baltimore lineup, but Sonny Gray has a 2.46 xFIP on the season. Pretty solid in that regard, 3.36 expected ERA. Has a 3.13 BABIP as well. So I think there's potentially positive regression that could be in store for him, the same way that I feel that way about Framber Valdez on this slate, somebody that I'm over the field on as well. But I'm not going to be getting to anything substantial. I do have double digits of him right now at 10%, but yeah, I'm not getting to as much Pablo Lopez against Washington. The strikeout rate is pretty comparable to what we're seeing for the Arizona Diamondbacks against righties here. Washington historically, well, last season it was not really striking out as much against right-handed pitching. Pablo Lopez, though, pulling that ownership, I could see him being a little bit more popular, and as such, getting to a little bit more of Tanner Houck at 16% ownership. I'm currently over on that one as well. Him and Valdez ever so slightly. So trimming a little bit off of Pablo Lopez. I guess for me, the one guy I just have really no take. I bet the over of 7.5. I think it's a pretty good spot. It's since juiced pretty heavily to get 7.5 now. But Logan Gilbert feels like I should have more interest than what I do. It's a very difficult matchup against the Yankees, no doubt about it. He's pitched well, but sometimes I feel like T-Mobile helps pitchers out so much. So when you get Seattle out on the road here, you can take advantage. But Logan Gilbert has a career best 3.45 xFIP so far this season, looking pretty darn good in that regard. 3.11 expected ERA to go with it. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing with him here, though, because of the matchup. I feel like I should probably give him a little bit of a boost, but overall, I'm pretty happy being pretty flat at the top as well.
Yeah, nothing really that I'm prioritizing here. And then we'll go to the next range of pitchers, which also has a couple of popular options. Most notably, Framber Valdez, 22.5% on some ownership, nothing really all that crazy. And then we've also got Taj Bradley at 37% ownership. So I actually want to talk about just these three pitchers in the 8K range independently. I know it's only three pitchers, but they kind of exist in a tier of their own when you consider that Taj Bradley is the chalk of the slate. Marcus Stroman, I think, is I very, very seldomly get lineups with Marcus Stroman, but I actually think this is a slate you can make a case for him. 13% owned, not all that expensive a price tag against this Mariners team that swing and misses as often as they do. And then Framber Valdez that we just mentioned. And we also got a question in the Discord channel from Hey, I'm Drew 95. He wants to ask us, he says, what are the cash plays, pitchers in stacks? Thanks a ton. And then he says, tell Eric Clark or Caitlin Lindquist that he could certainly do better in Indiana. Be patient. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a rough start to the year for yourself playing in the WNBA for the first time, Eric/Caitlin, but it's okay. I think a lot of talent there. It's going to turn around. What would be your preferred pitching combination for cash games on DraftKings?
Wasn't very nice.
I said I think you're going to play better going forward.
You're probably going Taj Bradley and Pablo Lopez in cash today.
Actually prefer Framber Valdez and
good
Taj
because I prefer
Bradley.
I prefer him in tournaments. And yeah, I mean, Pablo Lopez is more expensive there. Framber Valdez, there are so many good signs for Framber Valdez right now that it's hard to. Yeah, I'm betting the K ladder of Framber Valdez. I'm pretty happy to. So yeah, we'll go Framber and save the money.
With that said, I mean, you could really, if you have the salary to go up to Pablo Lopez from Framber Valdez, that's fine as well. The only thing I really feel strongly about in cash games on DraftKings is that you absolutely should have Taj Bradley in it. And then as far as your other pitcher goes, I would say it should be Framber Valdez or Pablo Lopez. I slightly prefer Framber Valdez, but you could really go in either direction once you're getting to, those pitchers as far as cash games. And then the other part of his question, we'll talk more about stacks in a little bit, but hey, I'm Drew wants to know, who should he be prioritizing for stacks in cash games? Which offenses are chalkier in spots that we think he can't really go without in a cash game format?
You're playing some Milwaukee Brewers against Mr. Weathers. You're probably playing some Detroit against Kansas City. Ninth inning bump on the road. Kansas City, decent weather. Michael Wacha pitching over his head right now. Minnesota, my Minnesota Twins on the road against Washington. Always like getting to that ninth inning bump if it's ever like a this or that. And if you have spend ups, never hurts my feelings to get to a bat or two of the Dodgers. I think without spending for a 10K pitcher on today's slate, we don't have a Chris Sale or, some of these other guys that have just been pitching extremely well to start this season that are going to be 10K going forward the rest of the way. There's no real reason to get the Yamamoto. So if you can fit in a Dodger or two against Slade Ciccone, I think that would make some sense as well.
Hard to not say the Milwaukee Brewers.
Got the Dodgers lineup, surprisingly enough, just now.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
We got the Dodgers lineup early.
Okay, please don't be anything fucking stupid.
It's like, exactly. Oh nope, Rojas is in the 9-hole, so Rojas is out there. So that's a little bit annoying.
Let's see. Is there?
Gavin Lux is not in the lineup. That's the main thing to note.
Okay, let me see. My lineups. Yeah, gonna have to. I had 13% of Gavin Lux, so I am going to have to redo it for that. That is a little bit annoying here, but that part of this aside here, when we're looking at offenses for cash games today, the Milwaukee Brewers are a team that I'm going to be underweight to in tournaments. They're very, very popular, but there's no doubt this is the best points per dollar spot to get to on the slate. Ryan Weathers, not particularly good. Brewers offense has been great. They're also like oddly cheap in this matchup. I guess partly it's because of the ballpark they're playing in here in Miami, but you've got this team project for 13.5% ownership as a squad on DraftKings. There's not another single offense on the slate that's projected for double-digit ownership. So tournaments, I think they're a little bit overowned, but it's clearly one of the better points per dollar spots to get to on the slate. So load up on the Brewers in cash games today. And shout out to a couple of our friends here in the YouTube chat. Chris Williams gifted out 5 YouTube memberships, as did Malukar. So fellas, we appreciate your guys' support a whole bunch, especially hanging out with us. I know that we typically see more of Chris in the NBA side of things, but no basketball today. So he's hanging out with us to watch some baseball. So Chris and Malakar, thank you guys for the support. It is greatly appreciated. Anybody else who wants to support the channel, simply like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's get back to talking about the pitchers. And what do you make of the ownership going to Taj Bradley first here, Eric? Because he's the chalk of the slate. He is projected for 37% ownership. There's not another single pitcher on the site, or on the slate, I should say. It's projected for 25% ownership, 24.6 to Pablo Lopez and 22.5 for Framber Valdez being the closest. But pitcher ownership, it's pretty flat today outside of Taj Bradley. Do you view his ownership as being too high, too low, or is it just about right?
Yeah, it's probably like the little bear, just about right. 3.28 xFIP, 2 starts in. Thought there might be some pitch count concerns right in that first start against the Yankees. Nope, 93 pitches right out the get-go, 83 against Boston. If there's any concern I have, it's just that the Tampa Bay has just kind of been, I would say, treating him with kitty gloves over the course of the last 2 years. Last year, he pitched well enough to earn a spot in this rotation, and they sent him back down. And it was just a very strange deal. Taj Bradley, 13 strikeouts through 11 innings now this season. Ground ball, fly ball rate. I mean, he's going to be more of a fly ball pitcher, I think, going forward. But overall, the stuff looks really, really good. I just don't know if they unleash him for 100 pitches anytime soon, unless he really has it going. I mean, 6 innings against the Yankees right out the get-go was really, really impressive. I think the signs are there that he's a pretty darn good pitcher over the course of the last 2 seasons. Especially from a fantasy perspective. I think we're going to just see the strikeout stuff continue to blossom, but I think it's about right for the ownership. I'm currently barely underneath it, but I don't really have a problem with it. How about you?
Yeah, I think it's about efficient. I'm a little bit overweight to him. I have him in 40% of lineups. So right there, slightly overweight to the field. I mean, this is a young pitcher who is one of the top young arms that we have in baseball that is not quite yet established yet, meaning that this is somebody who a super highly ranked prospect heading into last season. He was, let's see. I remember talking about this the other day. Yeah. So going into last year, before he lost his rookie status, he was the 2nd overall ranked prospect in the Rays organization, 36th overall in baseball. And I mean, in hindsight, there were some issues with the number 1 ranked prospect. So maybe it should have been a little bit higher up there for Taj Bradley. I mean, who could have seen what would happen with Wander Franco? But Taj Bradley now, he is somebody who has great strikeout stuff. Here's where you get concerned. the results haven't been great at the big league level. So far this year, he's only made 2 starts, 11 innings, whatever. Last year, though, he did make 23 appearances, 21 starts, 5.59 ERA, 4.45 expected ERA. So those results really weren't great, but here's what stood out. It's the 28% K rate last year, 29.5% K rate so far this year. At his price point, he could probably pitch like 5 innings and give up 3 runs, which would be a bad like ERA result, but he might strike out 7 hitters in those innings. And then it could be a good enough score for tournament purposes. So due to his strikeout stuff, there's a clear upside here. He's underpriced relative to his upside. So Taj Bradley, I find him pretty difficult to get away from. He's going to be popular, but I think it's more or less warranted. One thing that we could discuss here, which we'll also bring up more when we get to offenses, though, is do you think there's merit to stacking against Taj Bradley for leverage when you consider that he's a super popular pitcher? He's clearly also very good, but there's a little bit of variance to him as well.
Without a doubt, especially because of the quality of the top of the Boston lineup. Jarren Duran, Tyler O'Neill has been one of the best hitters in baseball right from the get-go, making St. Louis look even dumber than they already are. Connor Wong batting 5th today is pretty wild. Moved him up there. Dom Smith, you know what you're getting. It's been brutal. It's been tough sledding the last couple of years for Dom Smith. But Reese McGuire, even if you want to get a little bit different, I think at least the top 4 are going to be guys that I have in quite a few of 3-man lineups that don't have Bradley, obviously. I just think that there's a ton of upside anytime you talk about Rafael Devers, Tyler O'Neill, Duran. Wilyer Abreu, I don't mind whatsoever either. 49% hard hit, hitting high fly balls, has a little bit of speed too, not nearly as much as Duran, nor does anybody, but David Hamilton has some steal upside as well. So does Rafaela. I think I'm more than okay firing up some guys there, especially because like Taj Bradley's got, I'm not going to call it innings concern, but like we've only seen 2 starts. We don't know what it looks like if he gets off to a tough start here, if they're going to actually let him go deeper into this game by any means. I would doubt it. So in the event that you catch him on a day where it's not top tier, I mean, you go back to last year's results, you kind of pointed them out, anything hovering around 4.5, 4.4 expected ERA, anything that's, you know, got strikeout upside, but is giving up hard contact, that can definitely be freaky. And Taj Bradley has certainly done that in the past.
And now let's talk about the other 2 pitchers in this pricing range where we've got Marcus Stroman, we've got Framber Valdez. If you are not going to be playing a lineup that has Taj Bradley, would you be more inclined to go to Framber Valdez, or would you be more inclined to go to Marcus Stroman? Or is it scenario maybe like both of these pitchers?
I love Framber Valdez today. This is a guy that all of the signs are back, and I would call what the Angels have done pretty unsustainable without Mike Trout. We're starting to see some emergence for Joe Adell, but a 114 WRC plus against lefties, I didn't see that coming. Only a 148 ISO, so in terms of the power metrics, not there, but runs created. I mean, it doesn't really shock me when you talk about some of the steal upside that exists for some of these guys. Logan O'Hopp's been one of the better hitting catchers. Catcher, a pretty improved position across big league baseball this season. You know, Paris, we're still waiting to see on him. Zach Neto, Willie Calhoun's had a decent start to his season, but even in there against a lefty, find that to be pretty fascinating. I mean, Framber Valdez ground ball rate is back to being a superpower. 68% this season. I mean, that is pretty wild. A 13% difference from last season to this season. He had a really tough second half of the season, had a really, really tough playoffs. But then at the beginning of this year, just came back firing with that ground ball rate. A 7.9% fly ball percentage is just absurd. I do look at the velocity. It's down over a mile per hour year over year, but what he's doing is getting back to what he does best, and that's just hammering sinker balls and curve balls repeatedly so people can spike them into the dirt. I think we're starting to see that strikeout stuff come along for the ride a little bit. He's only at 21.2%, but I would expect it to start climbing a little bit here as his velocity turns on. 3.57 expected ERA looks good. I just think you're in a great spot to get 6-7 innings out of him against an Angels team that I don't buy into what they've done in the early going against lefties.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting most of my pitcher exposure in this price range. So I've got Taj Bradley as my most rostered pitcher. Really like him for large field tournaments. I think there's a separate conversation we had in single entry where I think he's going to be like 55% or something owned in single entry Taj Bradley. So for those kinds of contests, I don't like Taj Bradley quite as much. I like him for large field tournaments though. But Framber Valdez, I'm surprised he's not more popular here against the Angels. I like him a good amount. And then Marcus Stroman is $8,300, only 13% on against the Seattle Mariners. pitchers have been crazy popular against the Mariners all year. And while Stroman is not the best fantasy pitcher, I kind of wonder if the Mariners are such a strikeout prone team that they could be struck out by anybody. So I have some interest in a low owned Marcus Stroman here. Certainly not a pitcher I like at all for fantasy purposes for the most part. But if you give me an actual quality of real life pitcher that's going up against the Mariners at a reasonable price tag and low ownership, not anything crazy, but I have 20% of Marcus Stroman. So I'm a little bit overweight to Stroman, Valdez, and Taj Bradley in this mid-range here. So let's talk about punt options at pitcher. Then we'll look at the FanDuel side of things right after that. And then I'll circle back into Discord to see if we have any questions from people. But nothing really all that popular on the low end here. Once we get below 8K, there are a handful of options here. But Michael Wacha's 10% owned against the Tigers. Joe Ross is 13% owned in a good matchup against the Marlins. That's it. Those are your only two pitchers that are projected for double-digit ownership. Are there any punt plays that you're liking for any particular reason?
Joe Ross. I hate it. I have so much Joe Ross right now. He's the guy I'm currently the most over to the field on, and it has a lot to do with the matchup, sure. And it's not even like a spectacular strikeout matchup relative to what you might expect. Over the course of this season, Miami, they've only had 21% K rate against righties. 67 WRC plus, though, is just absolutely... Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong sheet. 20.5% K rate there. 91 WRC plus. As soon as I said the WRC plus, I knew that I was on the wrong section of it. But Miami is awful. It's a fantastic park now that we're going to have the roof closed nonstop from now until the end of September, basically, because of the humidity in Miami. I think you're just looking at an improved ballpark and situation. Joe Ross, he's gotten a little bit unlucky as well. 4.61 ERA, 4.13 expected ERA. I know it's not great. I know he's not some phenomenal pitcher, but he is 5,800 and gives me exposure to pretty much all of the expensive stacks. I do have some cheapies that I want to get to because I like the Yamamoto piece, but on the bottom end here, I find it hard to overlook how Joe Ross looks to me.
I mean, I have a worse answer than you do because you're going with...
He had a 24% K rate in 2021. He hasn't been in baseball for a couple of years there, but I mean, it looks okay right from the get-go. Are you going to play Weathers on the other side?
Yeah, and the reason I don't think Weathers is any good. I think the Brewers have a good offense, but just when I run everything through the Sims, here's the issue. Nobody's playing Weathers on the slate. He's projected for super low ownership. He's $5,500. I'd never in a million years play him on FanDuel on a single pitcher site. But then also I look at the Brewers as we talked about them being a cash game offense to play. But as far as tournaments, this is the most over-owned stack on the entire slate. So if this is a stack that I'm not really getting that much exposure to, and then we've also got kind of flat pitcher ownership on the other side, and you got a guy in Ryan Weathers who is not good, but he's so cheap. We see this all the time. How often does a cheap pitcher just go out and it's like, oh, hey, he pitched 6 innings, he gave up, 2 runs and had like 4 strikeouts. And at this kind of price point can go ahead and break the slate. So I think he's a good leverage option. I don't like him. If you guys are playing 1, 2, 3, 5, don't play Ryan Weathers. But for me playing 150 lineups today, I'm going to have Ryan Weathers in a chunk of them. And I think it serves as good leverage in large field tournaments. I'm not advocating for him in any way other than the fact that he's very low owned, he's very cheap, and he's going up against an offense that I perceive as being very over owned.
Yep, I totally understand all the reasoning there. I prefer Joe Ross because of some of the underlying stuff, but I have no problem with it there. Milwaukee, with no Rhys Hoskins in that lineup, it's definitely been a downgrade here over the course of the last week, and I would expect that to kind of be something that continues. They had been one of the hotter offenses in baseball to start off the year. Always was expecting negative regression to kick in, and it just kind of never did. Contreras, Yelich, Ortiz, Adames, I'm still going to be getting to pieces of those guys, but it definitely drops off. Not sure what to make of Owen Miller. Weimer, I don't really believe in. Monasterio has been awful for a couple of years. Churio, I think he's going to be all right against lefties, but not super excited here in this spot for him either. I'm with you. I think that getting to a little bit of him makes some sense. I'm pretty confident that Joe Ross is the better pitcher between the two. And half the ownership you can make that argument for sure. $300, that's negligible when you have somebody that you're punting and sub 6K with. I'm looking at my lineup, so I'm just playing a little bit more Joe Ross, but I do have a little bit of Weathers.
Yeah, and your points about Joe Ross, I don't disagree with. It's really just more so that I'm getting leveraged by playing Weathers. That's all it
100%.
comes down to.
100%.
Don't expect him to be any good today, right?
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
sure
Just
people
sacrifice
will
the lineups to the gods. That's what you got to do from time to time. Give them a blessing. Give them an offering.
sacrifice Eric and three virgins. By the way, we got a couple of super chats here from Chris Williams, who's shouting you out here, Eric. He says, first, like always, great show, guys. You know me, NBA Showdown is my jam. Hard to pass on those 100K showdowns. But when NBA ends, he says he will be here daily. So hit the like button. And then he follows up by saying, put this in Eric's tip jar, which, by the way, Eric's tip jar, he just bends over backwards and you put stuff in him. But he says, put stuff in Eric's tip jar for his DJ performance celebration last night on Playback. He said, legit the happiest he's ever seen you, Eric.
It was probably the happiest that I've ever been. I just did again, if people got the memo, they got the memo. You got invited to the party. Once in a while, if you follow me at Eric Lindquist, you get a little something in the goodie bag. I don't bend over. I don't know where that came from, but I was very happy to just DJ for the celebration. Probably I'll do that after every Timberwolves win now because it was just too much damn fun.
Yeah, hopefully many more. Well, many more. 8 more wins for the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's as many as they could have for the rest of the year. So hopefully we get 8 more wins out of Minnesota Timberwolves. I'll have a little bit of extra money in my pocket, which could go right into that old tip jar. So let's see what else we have as far as questions are concerned in Discord. And then we'll go and we'll look at the pitchers on the FanDuel side of things. And then after we get through the FanDuel pitchers, Mike, we'll build some lineups in the lineup generator and we'll see what it is that's popping up there before we start talking about some stacks. And all right, no other questions here at the moment. So let's look at the FanDuel side of pitchers here for the people who are playing over on FanDuel, Eric. And once again, I'm just going to refresh ownership
I'm playing a little
here
FanDuel
to
today,
make sure I've got everything most updated in front of me. And this is crazy. This is about as flat of ownership I could ever remember seeing. On FanDuel, no pitcher is north of 20% owned, but we have Stroman, Sonny Gray, Framber Valdez, Taj Bradley, Yamamoto, Pablo Lopez, all right around 10% ownership. So just incredibly flat at pitcher. These guys picking up all the ownership pretty much spread out amongst them. And then you just got the rest of the pitchers on the slate, each projected for 1, 2, 3% ownership, things along those lines. And if you are looking to pay up for one pitcher on FanDuel, Eric, who would be the guy you go to? Because the way pricing has worked on FanDuel this year, every pitcher is typically almost about the same price. So you've got all the guys that we just talked about, with the exception being Marcus Stroman, who's $7,900. All the other pitchers, double-digit owned, about the same price. Who's your favorite spend-up option to get to on FanDuel?
Yeah, my top play, I'm playing a little FanDuel. My highest owned Yamamoto is 1. Number 2 is Framber Valdez. And number 3 is Taj Bradley.
Yeah, if I'm going to be paying up for somebody on FanDuel, Taj Bradley doesn't have anywhere near the same appeal to me on FanDuel he does on DraftKings for a couple of reasons. First off, he's 10K as opposed to a price range in the 8K range. Another thing, too, is that I am a little bit concerned that Taj Bradley is going to be able to get through 6 innings to get that quality start bonus. I'm even concerned that he gets through 5 innings to get the win bonus. So Taj Bradley, not nearly as strong looking of an option for me on FanDuel as he is on DraftKings. So with that in mind, if I'm paying up for one pitcher on FanDuel, I'm going to go towards Pablo Lopez. I love the spot for Yamamoto, and I like the price tag as well, $9,900 on FanDuel. The problem, though, is that when we talked about the ownership being, pretty close between these pitchers, he is still 17% owned, so slightly more popular, and we have a better projection on Pablo Lopez. Once again, just slightly, but give me the slightly better projection with also the lower ownership on Pablo Lopez on the high end. And then I'm going to be spending down a pitcher. And also just my overall favorite tournament play to be getting to on FanDuel, $7,900 for Marcus Stroman, where he's not all that popular, but also at $7,900, he's opening up a lot of salary savings for you. And then also on a site where things like the win bonus, the quality start bonus hold more weight, that's kind of what makes Stroman a better FanDuel pitcher than DraftKings. So I really like Stroman at $7,900. What do you make of him at the $7,900 price point on a single pitcher site?
He's all right there. Second highest owned pitcher for a reason there. I think anybody facing Seattle that is right-handed from now until the end of the season, we'll talk about 28.8% K rate, highest in baseball. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon either. You've got guys like Dylan Moore, who I did take his more than 0.5 hits prop for, for a couple of different sites today, but I think having him batting sixth, I mean, 24.8% K rate higher against righties here. Dominic Canzone is a walking strikeout, even though I do like his prospect rating, 503 expected slugging. There's positive signs there as well. Just the floor that you get from strikeout upside. Every single person in this Mariners lineup has higher than a 20% K rate, and all but one of them have 25% or higher K rate. So we've got Rojas there at 20.1%, Ty France 23%. Both of those a little bit lower against righties, but Ty France buried to the 8-hole, just wild to see. I am with you where I understand why Marcus Stroman is pulling that ownership there. He's the second most popular play on FanDuel.
We've got a question here from Einsteinium, and we'll answer this, and then we'll build some lineups in the lineup generator. He says, do we have any interest in Slade Ciccone as a long reliever? He is projected for basically no ownership. Really difficult matchup on the road against the Dodgers. I understand where he's coming from, where he says that if he's going to be a long reliever, he's going to miss the top of the Dodgers order. Yeah, the first time around, but no, is really the short answer to this question. The long relievers also get so dicey. Sometimes they don't even end up coming into the game when you expect them to. It's a terrible matchup against the Dodgers. And then also, it's like, how many innings are we going to get out of him? Is it going to be 2, 3? Is it going to be more than that? There's so many variables here, and it's such a tough matchup against the Dodgers. He's not in any of my top 150 lineups. Do you like Slade Ciccone at all?
No.
Yeah. Don't think.
And also, Sean V just called Yamamoto bum ass. Yamamoto, Sean V, not playing that bum ass Yamamoto. What? Why are you talking? 3 xFIP, 3.44 expected ERA, first season in the bigs, got paid a handful of money for a reason. He's already at a full 1 win above replacement. I don't know what you're looking at to call him bum ass.
He's just calling him bum ass. That's just his analysis of him. It might not be his birthday today.
What if it's not his birthday? Christian Walker owning Dodger Stadium. I can't with this dude. But I forgot baseball shows with Sean V in the chat drive me insane.
Keep them coming. Keep the takes coming, Sean. Keep the takes coming. Let's put some lineups in the lineup generator here, Mike. We'll build some for DraftKings. We'll build some for FanDuel. We'll look at the results, and then we'll talk about some of our favorite stacks of the slate before heading out here. And don't forget, we'll jump on over at Playback, and we'll sweat out the games on MLB Game Day, and we'll see we'll see what in-play outs, in-play runs brings us any kind of luck for today. So let's start by building lineups on DraftKings here, Mike. And don't forget, if you guys want to sign up for the lineup generator, use the link below, less than $15. And that's also going to get you access to our Discord channel, as well as our player projections are in here, ownership projections. Let's go all stack types. And go contrarian lineups for today, since it's a smallish slate. I want to see what that ends up bringing us. Don't lock anybody in. So just skip that. And yeah, save these lineups. Then we'll see what the exposures look like. Sean's a Dodgers fan, by the way.
How are you calling him bum ass then? I don't understand. I don't understand what you're even looking at. What don't you like from Yamamoto? It's just a dumb error. Like, it's a dumb comment. Not playing that bum ass Yamamoto.
I'm
298 xWOBA, 27.5% K rate.
Just not sure it's his birthday. Mike, could you blow this up on your screen a little bit to make it bigger? It's pretty hard to see. Yeah. I see Pablo Lopez I saw Pablo Lopez and Yamamoto at the top, it looked like, but it was hard. It was kind of hard to make out some of the names after that. So at least when we're building contrarian lineups here, there we go. That's helpful. Boy, we're going to be spread out at offense, are we not? Because if you're looking at the pitchers here, Lopez, Yamamoto, Valdez, those are our 3 most rostered players. Then you're seeing some Twins bats here, Buxton, Jeffers, Kyle Farmer, Manuel Margot. There's Stroman showing up in some lineups. So check out the stack exposures, Mike. Yeah, so Minnesota, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Detroit, KC. Anything really sticking out to you about these player exposures, Eric?
My Minnesota Twins, they are popping in the club, bottle full of bub. It just wildness. Not a ton of Dodger stacks. I find that pretty surprising considering the Sims tool. My first run had 8%. My last run had 9.33% in current exposure. So seeing no Dodgers popping up is a little bit surprising to me, potentially. That's what happens when you have some true filth down at the bottom now with Rojas. Hayward's back up. He was on the IL though, so I don't really factor that in too much. I think we could be looking at Hayward being an okay option here for the time being. I don't mind getting a little bit of Houston trickled in there. St. Louis, I really, really like as a stack today. There is no doubt that I'm just going to leverage myself getting to a lot more of the St. Louis Baltimore game. It's the one weather spot where we're going to see an increase. It's 83 degrees at first pitch, 65-degree dew point. We've got some humidity coming in. It's almost summer, friends. We're almost there where we're going to have some pinball numbers for some of these stacks. And we're going to see 15, 20 runs in some games very, very shortly. Feels like we haven't seen that a lot this season. I love St. Louis. I also like Baltimore a lot, and I don't even see Baltimore on that screen, which makes me extremely happy. Again, Sonny Gray's very good. He's got the best xFIP of any pitcher on this slate, and yet I'm kind of just looking at Baltimore's offense and seeing them as anytime you can get them really, really, really low owned, you just kind of have to do it.
Let's talk about a single entry stack for DraftKings. They'll build some lineups for FanDuel here in the lineup generator. And I just uploaded my lineups, Eric. I'm going to be playing the Boston Red Sox as a stack in single entry. And it's not because I think this is the best stack on the slate or anything like that, but you just got this pitcher that in Taj Bradley, I'm playing a lot of him in large field tournaments, but I mentioned before in single entry, I really do think we could see him get to like 55% ownership. And in that case, you've just got a pitcher who's very volatile with a clear upside, but downside as well. So give me a stack that I'm assuming in single entry is going to be like 2% owned against a pitcher that's volatile. It's going to be like 50% owned. Which direction would you like to be going in single entry? Or maybe do you align with me on the Boston Red Sox?
I don't hate that. Obviously, he's pulling the ownership there. I wish Sonny Gray was pulling more ownership, and I could very adamantly say Baltimore, but I don't think that is going to end up being the case. I'm probably going to end up going Miami in single entry against Joe Ross because I have so much damn Joe Ross right now. It makes me kind of nauseous. I'm probably actually going to switch that up and go to Boston with you. I'm just kind of looking at some of the more popular pitchers. I mean, it's basically just Taj Bradley who's pulling the kind of ownership where it's like, yeah, this is definitely the guy to stack against. We're going to see 50, 60% for him. I really don't want to attack Framber Valdez. I know he gives up the hard hit. It is all going on the ground again this season. He is a very hard guy to stack up against. He was very easy to stack up against at the tail end of last year. You got really low-owned offenses ad nauseum there. The other team that I might actually utilize is Seattle against Stroman. He's pulling a little bit of ownership, not anything crazy here, but I'm more in line with runs in that spot. I'll probably end up going Boston, but I feel pretty good about being overweight to Baltimore, overweight to St. Louis. Dean Kramer sucks, so I think that's going to be something I want to get to lots of. We didn't talk about Waka. We didn't talk about Reese Olson. Don't think that they're exactly ideal spots, but again, they're both sub 11%, so you're not getting any leverage there in single entry. I'm probably going to end up joining you with Boston here as I'm finishing this out.
All right, sounds good. So, Mike, let's see what we're getting to for lineups in the MLB lineup generator. Then Eric and I will round up some of the other stacks we're getting exposure to, and they'll hop on over and play back, and we'll sweat out games in there. But yeah, let's go FanDuel and go Contrarian again. All stack types, then Contrarian.
You got it?
Yeah, Contrarian, and don't lock anybody in. And just save some lineups there.
Damn it, Mike, don't lock anybody in. I'm about to.
Okay, cool. Just checking.
Warm it up, Chris.
Just making sure. And then I'll be able to just chill the rest of the way.
There we go.
All right. So lineups here over on FanDuel. We are getting to more of the Dodgers. Dodgers are easier to get to on FanDuel. I mean, it's just always the case with FanDuel with the way the pricing works there. Then as far as pitchers, Yamamoto, Pablo Lopez showing up most predominantly. That's making up like half of our pitcher exposure. Scroll down a little bit here, Mike. I want to see who the other pitchers are. Framber Valdez in 12% of lineups. Where's everybody else at? Oh, there. And then Michael Waka, Marcus Stroman. It's just a really spread out a pitcher on FanDuel, like a couple guys,
Mhm.
20%, then some 10%ers in there. Go to the stack
Five, seven.
exposure so we can see what the stacks are looking like on FanDuel. KC in 30% of lineups, followed by the Dodgers, the Tigers, the Cardinals, the Twins, Brewers. Really a slate where we're seeing ownership get spread out a good amount of both DraftKings and FanDuel spread ownership. Is that what it is for you as well, Eric? Are you prioritizing any individual offenses, or are you also finding that it's kind of spread out? Because I don't have any, I only have 3 teams that I have double-digit exposure to, and none of them are more than 20% stack exposure.
I'm pretty in line with what the lineup generator is doing there on DK. On FanDuel, a little bit different. I mean, we've got Kansas City, Dodgers. I have a lot of Dodgers. I have an okay amount of Kansas City, nothing crazy, but I think Seattle is a team that I'm just going to be playing more over there. We were just talking through the process of that as I'm uploading stuff. I'm going to play the Mariners because we have Stroman, the second most popular pitcher over on FanDuel. It just makes sense for me to get my leverage over there. Then I don't have to try to think about it too much over here and get my Boston leverage going up against Taj Bradley. I know you said you had 40% of him in 150. I have a little bit less than that. I'm right around 30% of him. Kind of flat at pitcher, more than I was even expecting coming into this show, but I don't have as much Kansas City on FanDuel there, but I'm very much on Minnesota on both sides here for sure.
Okay, and so is Minnesota your overall most owned offense then?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so other side of this I want to ask you is, what are you doing with a very chalky Brewers team? Because the Brewers are projected for 13% ownership. We haven't the highest top stack odds of any team on the entire slate, but it's still at 13% ownership, 11% top stack odds. We do have them as being quite a bit over-owned here. So what are you going to be doing with the Brewers in large field tournaments, which it is a little bit of a park downgrade, but in a good offense, they're underpriced and have a good matchup?
I have a lot of 2 and 3 as I'm looking through my lineups here. My fourth projected Houston 5 with Milwaukee 3. Got a lot of Milwaukee 3, Milwaukee 2. I pretty much have no 5 amongst my 150. Let me actually take a look in the stacks, and I am at 4% Milwaukee. So I'm pretty underweight to them relative to where the field's at as a whole here, but quite a few of like Contreras, Yelich, Contreras, Ortiz, guys of that nature.
Yeah, so I only have 5% Brewer stack, so I'm kind of making my bed elsewhere. But would you like to guess, there are 3 teams on the slate that I said, Eric, that I have double-digit exposure to. Would you like to try to guess which 3 teams they are?
The Dodgers.
No.
Okay, good.
I have a lot of secondary stacks of the Dodgers, 3-man stacks.
That's kind of what I have the most
to
of
make
too.
5-man stacks of them, though.
All right, that's fair. All right, number 1 has to be Detroit.
Detroit is one of them.
Then this is going to be fascinating. Minnesota.
Minnesota's another one.
And oh boy, I'm going to guess wrong between these two, but I'm just going to do it. Houston.
It is not. It is
St. Louis.
What was going to be your other guess?
St. Louis.
No, it's Kansas City.
Okay.
I've played a bunch of Kansas City this year, especially lately. It's a team in Kansas City that's so favorable for fantasy. They have power, they steal bases. So I do find myself getting to a good amount of them in tournaments, really on most slates. But another one today, modest ownership on KC, 6.7% projected ownership. And it is a team that I like getting to. Of the teams that we have that have an implied run total of 4.5 or higher, there's only 2 that are projected for sub 8% ownership. That's the Royals at 6% and the Yankees at 3%. But part of the reason for the Yankees, just they're expensive and have a tough matchup against Logan Gilbert. Don't mind them as a contrarian offense, but I do like Kansas City as a lower owned team. Are there any very low owned offenses that you're liking for today?
Miami, want to throw up. I talked about all the Joe Ross stuff, but I have some Joe Ross. I definitely am playing some Miami here too. We got Jesus Sanchez batting cleanup here. Jake Berger. It's been bad to start off the year. I think that there's still some power waiting in the wings. Jazz Chisholm, Brian De La Cruz have been fine. Brian De La Cruz especially. I think when you get to the bottom of the lineup, Otto Lopez is off to a decent start for himself. 550 expected slugging. Not really somebody who strikes out a ton. And then Fortes just as a cheap $2,200 punt on DK. I have more Miami than I probably should, filling in the gaps on some of these lineups. But They are pretty cheap, especially some of those punts at the back half of the lineup.
All right, let me double check Discord to make sure that there were no questions. And here we have one from, a couple of them. Mr. Cool Cam wants to know favorite stack on FanDuel for a tournament. So, my favorite DraftKings stack was or is the Boston Red Sox. I like them in single entry, but a lot of that has to do with just the popularity of Taj Bradley, which is not the case over on FanDuel. So my favorite FanDuel stack is the Los Angeles Dodgers, where you don't have to worry about the price tag quite as much there, Mr. Cool Cam. And then we've got Einstein asking if we're interested in the Tampa Bay Rays as a stack at all on DraftKings. Is that a team you're finding yourself getting to? It's a very difficult matchup against Tanner Houck.
No.
Yeah, that is a no for me as well. It's also kind of hard with some of these slates where the Tampa Bay Rays, it's a tough matchup against Tanner Houck, but they still have 3.2% ownership. It's not like you're rostering them at 1% ownership. You're not getting leverage or anything because Houck isn't all that popular himself, 14% owned. So none of the reasons that I would want to be getting to a low-owned offense. The reasons I want to be getting to a low-owned offense is either they've got like decent top stack odds and nobody's playing them, or it's a situation with a team like, the Red Sox going up against Taj Bradley where you're getting a lot of leverage because the pitcher's really popular. So none of those boxes are being checked by the Rays as a stack against Tanner Houck. Any other final thoughts on the slate, Eric? If not, we could do our home run picks and then we'll bounce over to playback.
It's a really fun slate again for tournaments. There's, obviously the leverage that's there for Boston, but there's not like a ton of like, I'm going to automatically a stack against this pitcher. So getting different contests, again, contest selection, probably the thing we talk about the least here. I do like getting to single entry on both sides here today, DK and FanDuel, purely for that. Seattle, my favorite stack for FanDuel purposes here as I uploaded everything. For DK, that is going to end up being my Minnesota Twins. So feeling pretty good about it. And go Joe Ross, something I didn't expect to say this season.
Also, one other thing that I want to mention before we head on over to playback, we've got a best ball product over at Stochastic, and it's totally free. So if you guys are doing best ball drafts, you want to check it out. We've got projections, rankings up over on the site for drafters, for Underdog, for DraftKings. There's also a CSV you could upload that'll automatically put our rankings into the pre-draft rankings. So we got all those in front of you when you guys are drafting, but totally free. All you have to do is go over to the site, make an account for free, and you get access to all that. There's also going to be content that Gajeski is going to be putting out in addition to all the projections. But home run pick, Eric, who's the dong of the day? Who's going yard?
Ryan Jeffers is about to hit a home run in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, probably in 2 minutes. So Ryan Jeffers off of Mr. Mitchell Parker. Bye-bye.
All right. I am going to go with, I'll go with Rafael Devers. Rafael Devers in my single entry lineup, looking for the leverage off of Taj Bradley. Devers. That is the dong of the day here. So, guys, that kind of ends live before lock, but we're just going to go on over to playback. Let's see what happens here. Let's throw the MLB game day on screen. Let's see what happens. In-play runs, in-play outs. That's what Eric and I will be sweating. We're just going to be yelling about nonsense, and then we'll wait for the for the screen to update us on what happened. Let's have some fun. Come join us on playback, guys. See you over there.
Take this off you. All right. Thank you, Mike.